The more you buy, the more you save.
Publicly point out that Nvidia has been one of the worst trouble spots we've had with hardware manufacturers. So Nvidia, fuck you.
Oh my goodness, this is awful!
The world of low-end Nvidia GPUs is a world without hope. Once stranded in darkness for almost 2 decades, it will continue to be this way possibly forever. Granted, growing up I had a GeForce 7200 GS from Galaxy as my main GPU. For games newer than 2006, the card was bad, really bad. However, for older or less demanding games, it was great and I had a lot of fun playing games as a kid. But this is something you can say about pretty much most low-end GPUs, and that includes iGPUs like the one we're about to take a look at. Meet the Nvidia GeForce 6150, or 6150 SE, or 6150 LE, I don't know. Released on October 11th, 2004, it is the graphics force of the nForce 430 chipset. Ah yes, nForce. A series that with time garnered a bad reputation for its low reliability. I am still surprised this Asus board still works. More on that later. The 6150 is equipped with a core clock of 475 MHz, 2 pixel shaders, 1 vertex shader, 1 TMU, 1 RP, share model 3.0, DirectX 9 and OpenGL 2.0. And of course, being an iGPU means it uses system RAM as VRAM. This video took a really long time to make because of this bloody board. Originally I wanted to use an Athlon 2 X3 455 for testing, but using the latest BIOS, the system would not boast. I thought the reason was because the BIOS was made before the CPU's release, but nah, downgrading to the previous BIOS version fixed the problem. And now I could put with the Athlon. But there was another problem. For some reason, I was getting less than half of the performance of other people's 6150. I tried different settings in the BIOS, different RAM configuration, reinstalling Windows and ultimately the fix was downgrading to an even older BIOS. But that means the system no longer recognized the Athlon, so I had to use this Sempron 3200 Plus, an entry-level CPU from 2006. To ensure no bottlenecks were in place, I did overclock it to 2.16 GHz, which gave us solid boosts. Other specs of the system include 4 GB of dual-channel DDR2 800 MHz RAM and Windows XP Service Pack 3. Starting off with synthetic benchmarks, the 6150 got 5693 in 3D-Mark 2001 SE and 1539 in 3D-Mark 03. These benchmarks do love a good CPU, so expect slightly higher scores with a better CPU. Nevertheless, this iGPU seems to be on par with the likes of a gimped Radeon 9250. Moving on with actual games, Quake 3 was a pretty solid experience, though it will struggle a bit with effects on screen. This seems to be a common thing with low-end GPUs from back in the day. Halo Combat Evolved was just playable with no major stutters, but framerate would fluctuate in action. Whether or not a drop to 640x480 would alleviate the slight issue, I don't know. I did not have time to test that. The 6150 did a really good job with GTA Vice City. We were able to crank the resolution up to 1024x768 and still get playable results. If you enable the frame limiter, you will get a very smooth experience that is better than the consoles. Half-Life 2 released just a month after the 6150, and here the iGPU was able to run it okay-ish. You may want to drop the DirectX mode to get a more stable frame rate. UT 2004 did not have a consistent 60 FPS index 17 and was borderline playable in Albatross. But that depends on what you call playable. Lowering the settings may help, but from my experience, only by a bit. To get a good enough frame rate in Need for Speed Most Wanted, we had to drop the settings and resolution to the lowest possible. But at least it was enough. This means the 6150 should be able to run the older NFS titles competently. Now we get to the 6150's Achilles heel, games from the 7th generation. In Oblivion, the very low preset was our only option, and even so, we could only get 30 FPS average. I would not recommend playing this game on the 6150. And no, Crysis will not run well, but at the very least, will give you a good laugh. So, is the 6150 bad? Well, you can play games, just not ones made 2 years after its release. Of course, the 6150 wasn't exactly made for highly demanding games, but rather playback of HD video, which the 6150 does a good job, at least with local videos. And basic tasks like web browsing was also decent. So overall, it's not totally hateful, but an upgrade to a dedicated GPU would have definitely made a difference for gaming. But of course, it would depend on how smart you were as a consumer, and if you were able to get away from Nvidia's trap.
You run your mouth and I run my business, brother. You run your mouth and I run my business, brother. You tell everybody I'm busted. You talk so much you got me disgusted. But you run your mouth and I run my business, brother.
This is like common sense. The more GPUs you buy, the more money you save. That's right. The more GPUs you buy, the more money you save.
Telling me you're my pal and end up telling me how to handle my gal. You run your mouth and I run my business, brother.